I felt like at that point in time, the best thing we could do is just get out and try to answer questions for a whole group because, it's awesome to answer the same question 20 times, but at the same time, it's great to reach out and do it to a large audience. Once we started doing that, we found that y'all really like this. And so we're going to just keep doing this. And as one of our clients, expect this on a monthly basis. And what we will give you on a monthly basis is an investment overview, kind of what we're thinking about investments, an advanced planning idea, which is going to be something that you can do to make your money go further, transfer better to heirs, save money on taxes or risk management outside of investing, and then interview someone from our professional network or experts. And the reason we have that in place is no matter what you do and no matter what you do well, you can't be the best at everything. And one of the things I'm so excited about today is because that professional network is so strong with Cindy, I really think we're bringing y'all one of the best. When it comes to Social Security and Medicare, we'll get to it more as far as her background and the things she talks about when we interview her. And with that, we're going to actually combine the advanced planning and the professional network piece into one, simply because Social Security and Medicare is such a big issue for many of y'all. So I am going to start sharing my screen. You guys can, along the way, please type in any questions you have. Barbara will watch that chat and interrupt me and read them out, and we'll make it better. I am going to move faster than normal through the investment piece, just simply because I think Cindy's going to have so many good things to say. So let me go ahead and get that, and good seeing all of you as well. So hold on here with my two screens. Let's make sure this moves over correctly. All right, this should be pretty close. Let's see this back here. All right, Barbara, can you tell me, is everybody seeing the screen properly? Or if not, please put into chat or else let me know if you're not. I think y'all should be. All right, so we're going to jump into some, as I said, the typical agenda where we have investment consulting, a little introduction, which we've already done, some advanced planning, and then a conclusion. We're combining the advanced planning and interview portion for this month. So the first thing we'll do is we'll jump into the investments. And one thing I can tell you all from the beginning is nothing matters more. And I think this is an important time because we're kind of actually, at least from where I'm at on this and our investment committee, at a time of a little bit of peace in the markets where interest rates have gone up so much. We were worried for so long, will that continue? Inflation did that in correlation, which makes a lot of sense. And now where are we at? And so when you think of that, you really have to kind of reevaluate your portfolio almost with a white page and just go back and say, all right, we shifted where we were in the business cycle, in the inflation cycle, and the economic cycle. Now, what do we need to do with the portfolio? And so here are the principles we follow when we make those changes. One thing I will say about y'all's own portfolios that I hope is good news, maybe wasn't over the last few months, but we were probably early to the game on that thesis that I'm talking about, but it's starting to manifest. And as that happens, y'all are very well situated, and we've made a lot of those shifts. So we'll talk about what those shifts might be and why. But to go through our principles, the main things we try to do, and I'm going to list a few of these: always stay independent, meaning have no basis or bias towards one fund family versus another, or investment versus another, or even company versus another. Diversify our investments, especially as a risk mitigation tool. And then always invest with goals in mind, and that's just important to financial planning. And one thing you'll find when we talk about Social Security is how much your goals may impact something like when we want to file or other things. Certainly for most people, this isn't true for all, but invest with a margin of preservation. Want to make sure that if we err on the side of preserving capital. With a lot of people in retirement, that seems to be better than, they'd rather lose less on the downside than make it on the upside. Not true for everybody. Sometimes we change that. Certainly, and this is the most important point probably of all six, investment with flexibility. So as the world changes, so should we, whether that be from a technology standpoint, an investment standpoint, even just an outside planning standpoint, and then certainly invest with humility. And what I mean by that is it never hurts anyone to realize that the market may be smarter than you. So with that, I will jump on into what we're seeing economically and how that might help us a lot inflation wise. All right, so one thing we are seeing on the aggregate economically is inflation seems to be mitigating. And as that starts to slow down a little bit, it's not always a direct at that exact moment correlation with interest rates, but long term, there should be a correlation there. And so what we're looking for is hopefully in the bond portfolio an opportunity. And if you look at the yield curve, it presents this right now where it's going to be really good to invest in from a yield standpoint, maybe the next 1 to 2 years of treasuries. And then after that, it kind of dips and comes back up. What you're seeing is that probably is an indicator more so about inflation than on interest rates. And that's really very nice as far as a predictor. And what that tells me for your portfolios and at least the confidence we have bringing to them, and it's really simple. I know what I said has a lot of economic context. So take this one point home. If you're taking notes, write this one thing down. It really makes us more excited about the bonds, whether we sit there and get good capital appreciation or just clip the yield. All of us at Merit think you're going to end up with a better experience in bonds than we've had over the last few years. Now, I will say this because a lot of people get thrown off on inflation and its metrics simply because the main price they watch is gas prices. Gas prices have been up 22% since the December lows, but that's only one factor of the economy. And one thing I would tell you guys when you look at this chart, and I love how this is put together. If you look at these two lines we have, the red line on top and the red line down here on the bottom, one thing you will notice on an average gas market or oil or, however, if you want to view it through what you pay at the pump or, the Texas crude or, a bottle or a barrel of oil, what you find is down here on this part of the spectrum, people start drilling more. Or actually, excuse me, it was the reverse. People start drilling less. And so the price tends to rise. Once you start getting above about this part of the spectrum, people have already, or excuse me, I reverse that. Down here, they stop drilling, but that rises the price. Up here, they start drilling because they can make more money. So it's right the first time through. And what they do is lower the price by drilling more. So what happens in a normal gas market is it kind of just bounces around based on the price. And what'll happen is it doesn't move one way in perpetuity on either side. So don't let that dictate too much of what you're thinking about inflation. I will say this, and this is pretty big for the U.S. consumer, and it's really the only cautionary point we have right now when we look at the economic and investment landscape, which is the U.S. consumer is in a great place. A couple of years ago, a lot of it had to do with staying home and saving money, some government stimulus, some other stuff. And they really got to almost a weird structure for the U.S. economy that we really weren't used to, which is, for the first time in a couple of generations, houses were actually saving more than they were spending. On a micro level of financial planning, that's what I recommend for all of you to do. On the macro level, though, that can slow down the economy if they start saving. What you have seen over the last few years, though, is people have been spending that. So the one concern we do have is as people spend down their cash buffers, will the consumer continue being as strong? And the nice statistic we've seen to offset that is the labor market picking up and a lot less unemployment. So maybe it's not spending from savings, but maybe jobs or maybe something else. So that is the one area of concern, even though I would say both of these are positives. And then credit contraction is certainly getting tighter as far as lending conditions, but you should also consider that when interest rates rise, it's just harder to give as many loans. So that also dictates this. And that also means that could ease if they start going back down due to inflation, which might actually be a catalyst higher for the stock market. And then consumer sentiment, we talked about this, and I find this really interesting how when you look at this household savings, you would think there's a correlation, at least in my mind, more directly towards the consumer spending. There's not as much. It actually, even though their sentiment is going down, they kept spending their savings, which might be a harbinger to why we have a savings problem in this country, and a great intro into why Social Security has been a revolutionary and very important program to allowing people to retire. So anyway, we found it interesting. They kept spending even though the market or their sentiment was going down, but now it is going up. So at least for me, I argue how do those two offset? And even if they deplete savings, if their sentiment's high, which is usually high because people believe they'll make more money in the future, maybe what we have is a little bit of time where, quite frankly, we start taking on household debt again instead of excess savings. Remember, I'm talking on the aggregate, not for you guys as individuals. And that keeps the economy moving forward from a consumer standpoint. And then as far as equities, I will say we are in a period of optimism, but we haven't been there for a long time. And because of that, I do not expect, nor does our investment team, much volatility over the next, let's say, 6 to 12 months compared to the last 6 to 12 months. But don't be surprised if we have a pullback in the short term, because if you look at this over here, the fear and greed index, which you'll notice if you also compare that to the charts of the S&P, is right down here is typically when you want to buy it. Up here is typically when you want to sell it. However, we are not advocates of trying to time the market, but I am a huge advocate of trying to prepare yourself emotionally for what you may see. So if you look at this traditionally, it would not be strange at all if there was more volatility, but what you might have is a vote of confidence for you guys as investors working with people like us is probably the people that are selling in this extreme greed time or buying at this extreme greed time. Well, one day they're either selling and going to stay out too long, or they're buying and then going to have it go down, get out, and then the market will go up for the rest of you guys. But what's impossible is to time that. But do know that where I said the first two slides are very good indicators of optimism, these are more indicators of pessimism, and so we have to balance that. Now, with fixed income, one thing that you heard a lot going into this year was the year of the bond. You heard that in Money Magazine, Wall Street Journal, several places just talked about it. And overall, that hasn't taken place. But what has taken place is you still have those higher yields. We just haven't had interest rates lowering down to make the capital appreciation happen yet. And that might happen in 5 years. It might happen in 2 years. It might happen in 7 years, but it's going to happen at some point in time. All right. Then, all right, this is on the macro level, something I do want to point out. And this is one reason why, as a country, interest rates do impact us. And this leads a little bit into one of the questions we're going to ask to Cindy later, which is, the cost of servicing U.S. debt. It has surged, and that is not as a part of GDP necessarily as far as how much we owe, but more of a function of interest rates. It is, with interest rates going higher, so is the cost of borrowing for the U.S. Treasury. But that's the same for you as an individual, too. So they're experiencing the same markets you guys are. So basically, our thesis at this point on the overall investment landscape, we think in monetary policy is about to stay tight but consistent, maybe a little bit higher, but not too much higher between now and 2024. Slowing growth and the headwinds of risk for recession are evaluated, but even since we put out these slides a month ago, that's starting to mitigate a little bit, and that's one of the reasons we say humility, because even if you think that's going to happen, it's very easy to be wrong. We do expect recent market volatility to be down. That's gonna, for some of you guys that are using certain types of investments, impact maybe where we want to go with those. Structured notes, for example, on new notes. And the geopolitical risks, of course, with things going on with Ukraine and China are still a little bit high. And even though valuations are good, continuing to drive us towards a positioning of less than market weight on international. So I will pause right now for any thoughts and questions on y'all's end, and then I will start what is hopefully a good conversation with Cindy. Barbara, do we have anything come in?
No, no questions or comments as of yet.
Well, good. They must feel very confident in their portfolio and have no worries for the rest of the year. So congratulations on having that longer term view. Well, thank you for watching that, and please keep it up between now and the rest of the webinar. So for Cindy, I told y'all a little bit about her on the front end, and I'm going to go ahead and put her bio up here, let you guys read it for a second. I'm going to tell y'all a little bit of a story about her. Some of y'all might have heard some of this before you got on. Some of you might not hear it until now, so I'm going to retell it. But Cindy is, and then we'll turn it over and even turn off the screen sharing. But Cindy is, in my opinion, the best expert I have found on Social Security and Medicare. Certainly Social Security. Medicare's got its two sides and a whole bunch of variabilities, and she's probably sitting there going, yeah, I can help with that too. But if you look at her background, one of the things that stands out is how long she worked with Social Security, and I'll let y'all read that, as well as that she now helps the government and other large companies educate their employees on Social Security. One thing I remember when I was starting off my career as a financial advisor, somebody I really looked up to who was teaching me a lot about Social Security goes, yeah, here are some things you need to know about Social Security, but trust me, I am not an expert at all. There are people that are, and I'm not one of them. And I sat there and I learned so much from that individual, and I thought to myself for years, okay, so what the heck is an expert on Social Security? And then I met Cindy and I said, oh, this is what that person was referring to. This is an expert on Social Security. So let's give her a virtual round of applause and welcome Cindy Lundquist. And I'll start off with about 4 or 5 questions and then just turn it over to you guys. So hold on a second as I stop sharing. First of all, Cindy, do you want to give yourself any more introduction or background? I mean, certainly, some things I might not have mentioned.
No, I think you did a great job. I will challenge everyone to take this time to think of, is there something I wanted to ask about Social Security for someone, to someone that has answered. I just can't even, I wish I could count the number of questions I've answered regarding Social Security, which are countless number. So take this time to take advantage, and thank you for the introduction. Thank you.
All right, great. Well, the more we have you talk, the more beneficial this is going to be for everybody. So I'll just ask a few questions and then turn it over to them. First of all, and this is so basic that I know this isn't even like challenging for you, but we get asked this a lot. And since it's the most common question, I have to turn it over to you. What is your opinion on when to file? So many people talk about filing it early. As a financial advisor, we're often taught to teach filing it late. Sometimes health runs in between. Tell us how you go about helping somebody with that.
Yeah, when someone asks me the question, I basically have 3 questions I in turn ask them. And the very first question is, are you working? So if someone is 62 and they say, should I start my checks now at 62, or should I wait till 67? Should I wait till 70? Then the first question, as I said, is always, are you working? And the reason I ask that question is if you're under your full retirement age, and your full retirement age probably for the majority of you is age 67. It's graduated up now from age 65 to 67, but likely the majority of you are it's age 67. Well, if you start your checks at 62, they are reduced. That's the first thing you need to know. But you can start them at 62 because you meet the criteria of age. But if you're working, there's a limit of how much you can earn and still draw the Social Security check. And that limit this year is $21,240. Every $2 you make above that, $1 of your Social Security is held back. So if I'm talking to an individual and they're making $40, $50, $80, $100,000 a year, you don't need to file for Social Security because they're not going to pay you. There's no sense in filing the application that will not generate any income to you. So that's my number one question when I'm asked it. And if the individual says, no, I'm not working, then I have another question. And the second question is, do you need the money? Because I talk to some individuals that do not have pensions. They have not saved well in their 401k. They have not done the right things in order to put themselves in a position to delay receiving Social Security. So if they say, no, I'm okay. I'm receiving a pension. I have a good 401k or whatever the answer is, then that is always the second question that I have to know the answer. If you don't need it, then definitely I encourage you to wait. But then I have a third question, and I think it's very, very important as well. And the third question is, how is your health? And I know that David does this for his clients, there's always a break-even point, an age in which it was either to your advantage or disadvantage to take Social Security early or delay them beyond, even possibly beyond full retirement age. So the break-even point, and I've done countless number of break-even points in my career, if I'm looking at full retirement age as opposed to 62, the break-even point is around 78 years old. If it's between 70 up to age 70, now it's getting in your 80s, 81, 82, around in that area of age. So if I'm talking to an individual that has very poor health, and they're not going to live possibly beyond the break-even point, the age in which it was to their advantage or disadvantage to start, then I say go ahead and start your Social Security, except in one situation. And that is if you are married and and your Social Security is larger than your spouse's and they can benefit from a higher survivor benefit, then I might want to delay it for that reason. But if you're an individual and nobody is going to receive on your record, then your health has to be a consideration. So that's how I look at it. I think those three questions are very, very important. I encourage people, assuming they don't need the money, their health is good, to wait as long as possible, at least till full retirement age. And if it's not full retirement age, to delay it to 70 or anywhere in between there. Now, I have an exception, and I always have an exception for my responses, and I apologize for that. But everybody is individual, and our circumstances are individuals. If I am talking to a couple, and I have one party of the couple is a higher earner than the other, and they are around the same age. And sometimes they don't even have to be around the same age. I have a higher earner and a lower earner. Then I always encourage the lower earner to wait, the lower earner to go ahead and start, and then the higher earner delay it. But I also defer them to their financial advisor to help with that decision. And I'll give you an example of that. And I'm going to use a couple, a husband and a wife. The husband is the higher worker, and I don't ever mean to make a sexist comment because I'm not that person.
Hey, Cindy, let me make it. Guys, we die before the girls. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, David. And that's the truth. So if I'm talking to a couple and the husband's earnings are higher, it's been higher over his work history, his Social Security is much larger, and the wife has Social Security credits, can draw a check, but their check is not that big, or it's a very much smaller check. or maybe it doesn't even have to be a lot smaller. I encourage the lower earner to go ahead and start theirs at 62 if they are not working. Sometimes it will preserve the portfolio a little bit longer. So I always talk about the lower earner receiving, but then of course I defer it to David or whomever their financial advisor is to confirm that that seems to be the right option for the portfolio.
Okay.
So that's the answer to the big question that I get the most. When should I
Good.
start my Social Security?
And I want to throw something on top of that, which Cindy, you did, as expected, an amazing job with some of the facts on this. And I just want to take it to two planning things I see paralleling this, which is, first of all, most of the time, and Cindy's right about if you're working and under full retirement age, the offset and not taking it. Quite frankly, even if you get like, let's say 75% of your Social Security as a planner, that still makes me cringe because you're giving off those deferral credits and you're working. So it's really, when you think of it, it's not just how much you're losing that year, but how much you're losing over a lifetime. It makes no mathematical sense most of the time, but that's different than can you? And the second, and I would ask this about the break-even point. I thought Cindy expressed this really well. One thing we think about a lot as planners for y'all is risk. And so I would ask, where's the risk, for that, even an individual in poor health? And Cindy's correct if you want to maximize Social Security, but hopefully, and this is our goal for you as our client, and otherwise we want you to start working until this is something you can, say is true for you. Hopefully, whether you die at 77 or 97, you still have money left. And so the risk to me, if I'm just thinking about it, isn't I die young and my kids inherit less. It's I die at 97 versus 77, and I want to have more income, those last 15 years of life.
Yeah. And that is a huge risk. I mean, we're living so much longer. And when we think about that, I'll share this with you. When I worked for Social Security, and as you well know, I worked for 27 years, and I took retirement applications for years and years and years. And we were pretty well, as interviewers, to encourage people, if they were not working at age 62, to go ahead and start their checks, because people weren't living much beyond 80 years old. So the break-even point was so close. But I think that now every single one of us knows someone that is at least 90 years old. And I think that's the risk, that we live too long. I shouldn't say that. We are living longer, and we have to be conscious of that as well.
Actually, what I loved about what you said is the risk is we live too long. Whoever wants to say, oh my gosh, I lived too long. Let's not let your money be why you say I lived too long.
Yeah, exactly.
There's really other issues there, but let's not let your money be one reason you can live too long.
Yeah.
All right. I got a couple more here unless people start typing these in. I just want to get another elephant out of the room in a sense. And we can go back to my economic slides if you need me to do this, but I think you can knock this on your own. But is Social Security going to be there by the time I retire? And I have to give just a little caveat. She's going to tell you it is, but if you really believe it's not, just save more money. And it's hilarious. People ask, like, there's this like lucky insurance policy out there we can buy. And it's like, okay, Social Security goes away. You need $2 million more saved for retirement than if it doesn't. So you make the call. But anyway, that's if we're dealing with this, how can you control it? Cindy, what's your opinion on, will Social Security be there when I retire?
I have been saying this because I've been asked this question, especially for the last 25 years. Is Social Security going to be there for me? And the answer is always yes. And I truly believe that. I would not say it if I did not believe it. But as you all know, that Social Security does have a deficit issue that's going to happen right now. They're saying 2032. And that's not very far off. I mean, as you get older, like me, the older you get, the quicker time goes. So that's coming up. And I read every proposed legislation by the Congress, by the House and the Senate, of trying to shore up the system to make sure that when 2032 hits, that we still have money to pay benefits. If they do nothing by 2032, all of us that will be receiving a Social Security check would see our check go down 20%. Well, no one wants to see their checks go down in retirement. They want to see their checks go up. So what can they do and what will they do? And as I said, I look at all proposed legislation. And one thing that I have seen over and over and over again that I truly believe will happen eventually is there is a maximum amount of wages that you pay Social Security tax on. And that limit this year is $160,200. So if I have a high earner that's participating with us in the webinar, that's a higher earner, and you hit the limit, then your paycheck goes up 6.2% for the rest of the calendar year. Well, one of the proposals is to either lift that bar up, lift the bar off, or maybe keep the bar, but individuals that make over $250,000, then they would have to start paying Social Security tax on that amount above 250, in addition to the amount below the 160. I believe something like that will definitely happen. And the reason I believe it, and it's just my opinion, by no means do I know anything that Congress will do, nor do any of us know what they will do. I believe it should happen because it would put money in the system very quickly. And that's what they need. They need the money to go into the trust funds to gain interest on it to help the system. There's other changes that are, there's one out there that I really don't like, and I hope that it never happens, is they'd like to increase the payroll tax from that 6.2% on a very, very gradual basis. And I think that there'll be a lot of pushback on that. So I don't think that that will happen. The one that has come up now, and I've been watching for it to come up, but it hasn't until just recently, is to increase the retirement age. And that could happen. I don't know that it will happen, but if they do, it likely won't affect anyone that's participating in the webinar that's age 55 or older. Likely the age change will affect our children and our grandchildren. And I believe our children, our grandchildren definitely may see a different Social Security than what we see. So if you're 55 or older, if you're receiving a check, or if you're near retirement, don't worry about that age change. But that could happen because we are living so much longer. And just to also tell you why I don't believe it'll ever happen. Right now, there are 66 million people receiving a check today. 66 million, over 66 million. And right now, Social Security pays out over $102 billion every single month. If you take that away from the economy, we're in very, very big trouble. I don't think we'll ever see it go away, but we will see some changes.
You know, and I 100% agree with Cindy. I mean, it doesn't anger me if people start saving more money and therefore have more money invested when they get to retirement, which is the logical approach to that. But I fully agree. And one thing I want to throw out, and I think this is very important if we're managing investments, is in a sense, the true and entire faith of the U.S. government is the foundation of our economy. And even though this wouldn't be a technical bond default, wouldn't it be, in a sense, a type of default that would then bleed throughout just the entire economy and really world in a negative way? And it just doesn't, when you think about Social Security going away, would also make certain companies probably that you actually do business with, that you consider good companies, go out of business as well. It doesn't work for anyone. There's other stuff they can talk about. So there you go. I love the way you said that. And I think you're right. Correct me if I'm wrong, Cindy, because I heard this from another advisor. I haven't researched this, but in the past, Social Security's been in every bit this much financial trouble. I mean, the 80s, it sounded like worse. And then they made just some small changes, and that got us to where we are today.
Exactly. And they'll do the very same thing. I've seen it. I've seen lots and lots.
So give us a historical precedent. What were some of the small changes they made in the past?
Oh, well, small changes. Well, I think some of the small change, the big small change was when I don't even think it's small. It used to be when I worked for Social Security, started working for Social Security, students would receive a check. Children that were between 18 and 22 received a retirement check. I mean, not a retirement check, but a survivor benefit, or on their aged parents if they were drawing disability or retirement benefits. So they did away with that benefit. That was one little thing that saved a great deal of money. They changed. Now this was kind of a big change. I was working for Social Security when you turn 62, regardless if you turn 62 in the middle of the month or at the end of the month or the first day of the month, you received a check for the month you turned 62. Now you have to be 62 for the entire month. So if I turn 62 in September, I don't get a check for September, but I get a check beginning in October. So they changed that. They made that change where you don't get a check until you're 62 for an entire month. So those are some of the changes that they have taken on. I've seen so many changes. I've seen the formula changed. I've seen a lot of changes. I could go on, and I have seen the retirement age change. Some of you maybe know that full retirement age used to be 65. Now it's going to gradually be 67 for everyone. So I've seen a great number of changes, and it puts money in.
Cindy, while I have you and you take a moment, we have a couple of questions here.
Okay.
One question is from Michael. If you married at age 60, do survivor benefits apply, particularly as it relates to higher earners? Basically, husband higher earner, should wife start at 62 and husband delay until 70, allowing the wife to get his benefit when he dies?
So do you mind saying it one more time, Barbara? I want to make sure that I get all of the parties in line here. Would you say it one more time, please?
Sure. If married at the age of 60, do survivor benefits apply? That's, I guess, the first question.
Okay, the answer is normally yes. So if you were married at least 9 months and you're a surviving widow or widower, you can start receiving.
I'm reading this question a little bit different. So
okay.
We got another thing coming in from this guest, and I know a little bit about the situation. The key is so let's see. Let me read the whole question, not just part of it. So if you got married at age 60, do survivor benefits apply? Which I assume means you are a widower in this situation, particularly as it relates to a higher earner. Basically, husband higher earner, wife should start at 62 and husband delay until 70, allowing the wife to get his benefits when he dies. Key is the marriage happened between these two people at the age of 70.
Okay. So
or not 70, excuse me, 60. My fault,
okay.
60.
Okay, so
yes.
They married at 60.
60.
Doesn't matter what age you marry. As long as you were married 9 months at the time of death, then you're eligible for a survivor benefit. So if I have a couple and they get married at 60 and the higher earner dies and they're both 60, it doesn't matter how old they are when they marry. The key is, were they married at least 9 months?
Yeah.
And are they at least age 60 at the time of death?
Well, and I also think, and remember I said widower, which wasn't put in there, that part of this is, can they draw on their ex-spouse that passed away's survivor benefit from 60 to 70 and then switch over later, which yeah.
So if you are married and your spouse dies, and even if you're not drawing Social Security at the time they die, or you don't draw it immediately upon their death because you're not 60, but at 60 you start receiving the benefit. you can continue to receive that benefit even if you marry, as long as you marry when you're 60 or older. So it's easiest for me to use an example. So let's say that I am married to my husband, Doug, and we were married for 17 years. I divorce him. I'm no longer married to him, and he dies. And I'm not eligible on his record because I'm not old enough to get on his record. I get married at 55 to my new husband, and he's a high earner, and my husband Doug was a high earner. And when I turn 60, the question is, can I draw on Doug's record? Okay. The answer is no, because I married my new husband, Phil, and I'm still married to Phil. I'm 60 now, but I married him when I was 57. Had I married Phil when I was 60, I could still receive on Doug's record. So I could receive on Doug's record. And then if Phil died, if his was more than Doug's, then I could switch to Phil's. So it's very complex. That's the problem.
Okay, I'm going to jump into this and go ahead and say this is something we would have missed. Like, I can't imagine. I mean, I know about the widower's benefit, and I always tell people to take it at 60 and then switch over. But if a client, and I'm not even sure where this should go with a planning perspective, but if a client called up and goes, David, I met this wonderful woman and we're getting married in 6 months. I mean, what would my place to be like go, can you make it 18 months?
Yeah.
He's like, no, we're in love now.
Yeah, wait till you're 60. Well, I will share a story with you.
But I can see why.
To make it funnier, I work for, I've done work with another financial firm, and this individual had asked me a question. She said, I have a client, and this is in the Midwest. She's an advisor in Nebraska. She said, I have a client that her husband it died a long time ago, but he was a high earner. And my client got married at 59, and her own Social Security is not very big, and she would like to draw on her deceased husband's record because he was a very high earner. And I said, unfortunately, because she married at 59, she is not eligible on her deceased husband's record. So her question was to me, if she got a divorce, would she be eligible on her first husband's record? And I said, absolutely yes. So I don't know what kind of advice she got from her financial advisor of whether she should stay married or not, but I do want to share that with you.
That is actually hilarious. And
yeah, if that marriage terminated, then her rights would become, she would be eligible on his record.
I've often wondered, like, this whole idea of renewing your vows and how is that really romantic? In this situation, it's like, you take the monthly payment times 12 and the years you got it. And you're like, yeah, this is $70,000 worth of romance right here.
Yeah, exactly.
$100,000 worth of romance. Cool. All right. Let's jump into another question we have here. Let's see. Barbara, are you able to read Peggy Baker's question? It looks like we had something come in from her.
Sure. With Peggy Baker is asking, I'm still working and plan to work until roughly 67. I'm turning 65 later this year. I've been told that I need to sign up for Medicare by my 65th birthday or be faced with a penalty. Is this correct?
It depends. And the financial community uses that phrase quite a bit. So the answer to that, and Peggy, thank you for asking it, because it is a question that are on a lot of individuals' mind. Because when about 6 months before you turn 65, you're inundated with correspondence from insurance companies about Medicare. And if you file for Medicare within 3 months of your 65th birthday, your premium is based, you get a normal premium. Whatever it is, some people pay a higher premium if their adjusted gross income is above $97,000 for an individual, or $194,000 for a couple. So the premium today is $164.90. If you don't file in that 3 months before to 3 months after your 65th birthday, every year you delay receiving your Medicare, your premium is increased 10%. Except if you're covered by group insurance through your current employment or your spouse's current employment when you turn 65, and the employer has at least 20 or more employees, then you can delay receiving your Medicare Part B until you stop having that group insurance through employment, whether it's your employment or your spouse's employment. So for example, Peggy, you are currently working. You're turning 65. If you are covered by your group insurance through your employer, it doesn't make sense to file for Medicare B and pay a premium because Medicare will be secondary to your employer's insurance. Unless they have less than 20 employees that they're insuring through that group insurance. So what you have is an opportunity to delay taking your Medicare Part B until that insurance through your employment is going to stop, and you have an 8-month window to file for Medicare Part B, no premium increase for delaying it. So you could be 70 when you retire. 5 years later than your 65th birthday, you would think that there would be a 50% increase. No 50% increase for delaying it because you had group insurance through employment. It's called, Peggy, a special enrollment period. And that's what that 8-month window is for you. And hopefully that addresses the question. You can always file for A if you want because it's free, but Part B costs a premium.
And actually, Cindy, I'd like to ask you about that. And just as an anecdotal story, I remember when Merrick crossed the 20 employee threshold, and all of a sudden this like formal little packet ended up on the desk of the one guy we had that was over 65. And he's like, there's only one of me. Y'all could have just talked to me about this. And it was a really funny moment, but we definitely dealt with that. One other question on this, they're still working and they do the Part A, which, on the surface, is almost a no-brainer. It's like free insurance, right? But one of the downsides is it does disqualify you from an HSA. So how, and part of this could be us, part of this could be you. How do they evaluate if they're better off doing, just the group plan and the HSA, or no HSA and Medicare Part A?
I would say there is never a time that it would be better to take Medicare A and get rid of your HSA. I think that because Medicare would be secondary to that group insurance. So if I have somebody, it used to be, I would say, oh, file for A is free, go ahead and file. And then I had to stop saying that when the HSA became more prevalent because, and this is an IRS law, it's not a Social Security law. IRS says you cannot have Medicare and contribute to an HSA. So what little benefit that you would get from A being free doesn't make up the difference that you could get from the ability to save in your HSA.
Awesome. And for those of y'all that are still working, and certainly the person asking this question, take that to heart. Like, I love, because it almost never happens. Cindy earlier said depends. Notice she used the word always. And whenever we have an always, that makes it a lot easier to make this decision, right? All right, we have another question here. Barbara, do you mind reading that out? It looks like it's from another Barbara.
Barbara Pearson is asking, I'm divorced, still working, not taking Social Security. Can I get my ex-husband's benefits?
Well, again, it depends. So this is a question I get quite frequently. Can I delay receiving my own Social Security and receive on my husband's record or my ex-husband's record because I want mine to grow? And that used to be a very big strategy that you could implement is to receive on your husband or ex-husband's record, let your own, or wives, it's the, again, no gender biases here, and then delay so you could receive those extra added benefits, the delayed retirement credits that make your checks bigger by the time you turn 70. Well, that strategy of being able to delay receiving your own by receiving a spousal benefit, legislation was passed. Oh gosh, it has to be at least 5 or 6 years ago. I apologize that I don't remember how long ago it was. But in order to implement it, you have to be born prior to 1954. So if you were born in 1954 or later, you cannot put this strategy in place. You could as a survivor though. So if the ex-husband was deceased, you could take on their record and let your own grow. If you are not working, or if you are working and making less than the earnings limit, or if you're full retirement age, you can have unlimited earnings. So I know I put a lot of ifs in there, but survivor benefits, yes, you can do this strategy. Living case for an ex-spouse, no, unless you were born prior to 1953 and your earnings are going to be below the limit or your full retirement age. Yeah. Did I get that right? I mean, did I get that? I know I got it right, but did I get it clear enough?
I think you did. And, you know, one thing I noticed on that, and just kind of funny thinking back to, is that word always. Like, that used to be one of those, let's always do that. And now we just can't say that anymore. And unfortunately, it is going away for so many folks. You know, but that was a really fun strategy to talk to about people. And a lot of people got very excited about it once they figured it out. Didn't know about it. So anyway, we had something come in from one of our clients, Helen, and I just wanted to do this as an anecdotal and read what she said here. I did just what you're talking about last year. So she's talking to you, Cindy. Enrolled because I had group insurance through my work. My premium was not increased, as you said. One interesting thing, they showed the group A enrollment back. So I'm thinking she delayed it, as we talked about, to when I turned 65, even though I did not enroll in it. So her question was that automatic, or do you have to take steps for people in that situation in the future?
This is very, I'm very happy this question came up because it involves the HSA thing that we talked about earlier. And does it make sense to take your Medicare A? When you file for Medicare, if you are over age 65, your Medicare B premium is effective the month that you file, but your Medicare A is retroactive as much as 6 months. So if I have an individual that is retiring and or they're reaching, they're deciding to start their Social Security, and they start their Social Security, their Medicare premium, if they're already over age 65, it's retroactive 6 months, and they could have been participating in an HSA during that period of time. And so they have to stop that HSA early enough. Otherwise they pay a tax penalty, and none of us want to pay a tax penalty. So it is automatically retroactive 6 months. So if the person that asked the question, if I file for my Medicare during that special enrollment period and my Medicare B is at this date, and I have Medicare that's retroactive for 6 months, if I had a hospital bill out there and my insurance paid most of it, but not all of it, you could actually have the hospital submit the bill to Medicare to get reimbursement for that little bit of money that may have been out of pocket to you. So it's a great question to ask, and it is correct. It's always going to be retroactive 6 months.
Wow. Interesting.
If you're 65, if you're over 65, the entire 6 months.
Okay. Yep. Wow. That was cool. It's almost like a why not just like dip and have them take that. Yeah. Let's see. And she said she just did exactly what you're talking about, because I had group insurance through my work. My premium was not increased. One interesting thing they showed was how you did that. back, thanks. That makes sense. Perfect. That is so cool. I mean, it's almost like a little free back pay if something
Yeah,
happens
it
there.
is.
All right, I'm going to ask this last question because we're coming up on time, but I want to do a little bit of a planning summary before this, which is, at least from what I heard from Cindy, is the amazing amount of knowledge and experience a true expert can give. One thing that jumped out at me, and I'd love Cindy to say this, where she knows that people should talk to her, but transitions of any sort are just huge. When do you decide to file? I mean, once you're working on a financial plan, even something as simple as getting married at 59 versus at 60 can make a huge financial difference. That was new to me. The idea of HSAs and how to do that, filing that back stuff. And so what it at least struck to me is, if I was in y'all's shoes, and this is our goal, is not necessarily for y'all to know the answer to all this stuff, but to know and identify, hey, I'm in a transition, and because I'm in a transition, I want to have a conversation about that and understand that some of those transitional conversations may lead towards an expert like Cindy. I do want to position her as an expert on our team. It is no cost to you guys. If y'all want to use her, Merit covers that, and you simply get that as an extension from us. So, we want to make that available to any individuals that have a unique or complicated or confusing situation, whether it be, we didn't talk about this, we don't have time. I think, Cindy, we basically are going to have you back like once every quarter or 6 months, as long as you don't mind.
I would
But
enjoy it.
yeah, because we didn't even talk about stuff like the wet provisions, or the difference between Medicare Part A, B, C, D, supplement versus Advantage, all that stuff. There's so much. It's exciting. So with that, I'm going to ask you this question. Just, it's on the factual side. I think there is no planning that actually goes with this. I just thought it was hilarious that our government wants to save money doing this. So I have a question for you that you submitted to me, which is, Mom died June 30th, and I am told she was not due the check that came to her in July, even though she was alive all of June. Is that correct? Or let's even say she died like July 4th. No, that'd be bad. Sorry. July 6th, and got her July check. So how does that work?
Okay, so I've got basically two different dates. So if the individual, I'll take the easy one. If mom died July 6th and her check doesn't come until, there's checks used to always come on the 3rd of the month, but now there's what's called payment cycling. So checks are paid based on your day of your birth, what day it is. It's paid on a Wednesday. So let's say my Social Security check is going to come on July 15th, and I die July 6th, and my check that I am due that's paid on July 15th is for June. Since I was alive all of June, that's a good check, and I'm due that check, and that goes into the bank, and it is payable. But if I die June 30th, even though I was alive every month, every day of the month of June, the check that comes in July is not payable, because even if I died at 11 p.m. at night, I wasn't alive every minute. Excuse me. If I die on
any minute of July,
11 o'clock on June 30th, then that check, I wasn't alive every minute of the month of June. So it is not payable, and they'll come back and get that check. So when I told you that, David and I were talking about it, he said, that just is not right. I said, I don't know how many times I've had people say, this is not right to me. And David said, well, why did they do that? And I had to say, and it's really the truth, it's all about saving money. So that's one of the.
And I just say they're going to spend more money trying to get that check back than they do receiving a check back. But
yeah, I hate it. I hate every minute.
Yeah, and then the hilarious part is the administration work that they're going to then do on paying the death benefit of $250 for that person, which has got to cost them $1,000 to process. I mean, come on.
I know. That's exactly right. That's right.
Especially with all the work that goes into the death certificates and everything.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, Cindy, you've been wonderful. Hey, clients and people on this, thank y'all so much for attending. Hopefully this brought up some ideas for y'all, as well as just some of those indicators and light bulbs on where there might be planning. Always remember, this stuff probably impacts you, but it also impacts the people you know, and we can make this resource available basically to anyone who needs it and works with us. So Cindy is here. She's a valued member of our team. Thank you, guys. Let's see, we did have one question come in. Because of time, this is from Jeff. I'm going to just connect the two of y'all together and let y'all handle that, just out of respect for everybody else's. But thank y'all so much for participating. Certainly would love feedback on this topic, as well as what topics y'all might find interesting in future months, so we can really hit y'all with the stuff that you find the most value in. Thanks, and make it a successful one. I'll see y'all in a little bit. Bye.